Croeso, this is James, aka JP Harker, coming to you with another video. It's another one about books I've read, and it is Killing Floor by Lee Child, which is the first of the Jack Reachers. Ifor Bach, gan Eirig Salisbury, and another one, I don't even have a stand-in prop for this one, and it's The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And it was an audiobook, and I don't have a similar book to wave at you, so I will just be gesturing in my own natural way rather than utilising a prop for this one. Be warned, Ifor Bach I will be attempting to review in Welsh. The whole point of my picking this up is I'm trying very hard to remaster the language. There was a time when I was completely and utterly fluent, and I can carry on a conversation in Welsh, but I'm nowhere near as fluent as I would like to be. Nothing like what I was when I left school. And because I'm hoping to send my boy to a Welsh school, I'm going to need to be back on it when it comes to this. So I'm reading this. It was mostly fine, but plenty of times I thought, hang on, what? Luckily, enough of the Welsh is still in there that I followed the plot and I knew what was happening throughout. But there were plenty of times where I had to stop and double check and think, hang on, what does he... Oh no, okay, I get it. So yeah, me reviewing this in Welsh is going to be interesting because I have refused to prepare a sort of set of bullet points for it. I'm going to try and do Cymraeg off the top of my head. So we'll see how that goes. I'll save that one to the end. I'm going to do this one first. It's introducing Jack Reacher, Lee Child's Killing Floor. Now, it's a library book. Pontypridd Library, can't speak highly enough of it. Not only is it a place full of books, it's also a place where there's a little play area for children. So you can pick up your paperbacks and watch your child try to demolish things at the same time. Love Ponty Library. And I saw a few of these on display a while ago, and I thought, well, I don't read a great deal of this genre, but sometimes I enjoy it. I will give it a go, a little bit of variation. And, maybe it's because I don't tend to go in for the genre. I thought it was only okay. It wasn't a terrible read, it was a very engaging read. I kept wanting to go back to it and see what would happen next. But I didn't feel gripped. It was just I'd like to see what happens next. Oh, that's pretty good. And that was kind of where it ended. It wasn't something that made me think, man, I can see how this became a huge global success. So I'm going to get the flaws out of the way first. To sum up, Jack Reacher is a former soldier and military policeman who is now out of the army and doesn't really know what to do with himself. Because he was born on an army base, army family, he hasn't really known a life outside of the military, and he's floating around a little bit lost. And he comes upon a place where there has been a murder, and initially he is arrested because the murderer matches your description. You were seen in the vicinity, and we're looking for a guy like you. And that's where it starts. I'm not going to go into detail of it, read the book yourself. If you're into the genre, have a go, it's not bad. But I'm going to get the negatives out of the way first. First off, for someone who was initially a murder suspect, he gets involved in this investigation very, very quickly and easily. He is very suddenly very trusted. And it leads to that dreaded phrase, the Mary Sue, which too many people think just applies to female characters. It doesn't. You get many male Mary Sues, and this fellow is one of them. He is unbelievably manly and macho, and gets through most of his problems by being manly and macho, or by being cleverer than anybody else at anything. And one of the problems I have is he is his sort of partner in this is a 20-year veteran detective from Boston. And he's a 20-year veteran homicide detective. And Mr. Reacher, yes, he's been a policeman for about a decade, but he's been a military policeman. And he is somehow a lot better at tracking down murderers than this big city homicide 20-year veteran detective. Now, I'm sure that military police deal with murders now and then, but my understanding is most of what they are dealing with is desertions and clamping down on drugs and the various thefts and fights that go on between various people in the military. But there's not an awful lot of serial killer stuff for them to be looking into. There's not an awful lot of what he clearly seems to be an expert at in his time in the military police. I'm sure he knows a bit, but the sheer depth of this man's knowledge and insight and genius, and the way that it overshadows a man who's been doing this professionally for a lot longer, that got to me a little bit. As did the fact that apparently if you're in the military police, it's the same thing as being a super spy, secret agent ninja. He's never scared of physical conflict, even when he's vastly outnumbered and outgunned. It's just, well, all these people are dead. I'll simply do this, 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 and this, and I'll overpower this guy, and I'll shoot that guy, and I'll shoot that guy, and I'll smash through this and that guy. I think Jason Bourne isn't this confident. James Bond isn't this confident. They both get scared, but then overcome it and struggle through and succeed. And the thing that made it hard for me to like this protagonist is he never seems to struggle with anything. Everything is just taken in his stride. He's wrongly arrested, and he's thinking, well, if I get into prison, I'll have to beat up a bunch of people. And, oh, look, there's a gang of people, I should probably beat up all of them. Yes, they're armed, and they outnumber me, and there's only one of me, but I'm in no real danger. And that attitude continues. And I don't like it. However, despite the little slagging I've just given this, the plot, there's only one predictable twist. The rest of them, I was pleasantly surprised by. And there was enough mystery that I didn't really know what was happening, but I was getting little bits of this and that. And the plot kept me engaged, and it kept me wanting to read to the end, almost in spite of the protagonist. And yeah, I've seen that happen before, where a plot has been good, but the person driving it hasn't been. And I've still enjoyed it, because I've enjoyed what's been happening. So that's my view on The Killing Floor. It's a plot worth reading. If you like a sort of contemporary bit of murder and mayhem, it gets very unpleasant, some of it. Be warned if you're squeamish, some nasty stuff happens. But yes, I didn't like the character, but did like the plot. That's what I will sum up from him. Now, Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. There's a similarity here, and I'll come to it in a second. This book, recommended by a friend. I've got to stop taking recommendations from these people, because I don't want to give much about it, because what happens, there's spoilers quite early on. But it's the story of Quoth, who has now retired to be an innkeeper, but he has this, an anonymous innkeeper, and he's telling the story to somebody about, he's actually Quoth the legend, who is Quoth the Bloodless, who's this brilliant, quote-unquote sorcerer, and he had all these adventures, and he's the king killer and all of that. And it's told as first person, past tense, him dictating about his early life, and how he learned this alchemical scientific magic, and went from being this wandering fantasy gypsy type to the big city, to the university, and his various struggles. Now, my first bugbear, I can't blame the book, because it is personal preference. And personal preference, again, it's not the fault of the book, it's the fault of the person who recommended it. I don't tend to like magic as science. Codex Alera was good, I liked that, mainly because there was plenty of Roman legion stuff to distract me from it. But as a rule, I don't like it when magic is presented as science. It's become very popular these days to have a magic system where you go into detail about how the magic works, and then there's good logic to it. It means that the reader can then not be surprised when magic gets you out of a problem, because they understood here is what is required for the magic to solve the problem. And it makes sense. I just don't like it. I like my magic to be mysterious. And it means the magic can't have that big an impact on the plot, but it does have what I would call a bit more of a fantasy feel. To give the example, none of us have a real handle on what Gandalf and Saruman can do. And even the power of the ring isn't that clear. We only see sort of edges of the real magical potential. But because that active magic isn't what drives the plot, what drives the plot is the ring is seductive and we have to get rid of it, you don't need details of the magic, because it's the characters and their heroism and friendship and struggles, that's what's driving the plot. With a magic system, you can have the magic more directly involved, and that's fine. But I just don't really go for it. I didn't go for it in the Sanderson books, and I didn't really go for it in this. I don't like it, but that's just me. Something that is a little bit more objective is our boy Quoth. He too, much like Mr. Reacher and much like Kaladin in the Stormlight books, he's a bit of a Mary Sue. He's the cleverest person in this university. He's the cleverest person his teachers have ever met. He has a wonderful gift for all of this magic. He's also very, very tough and survives on the mean streets. He's also a brilliant actor and singer. He's the best musician in the world. And teachers and students alike are very envious of him. And we find out just at the convenient moment he's also a really good rider and knows a lot about horses and has lots of knowledge about the bigger world that a lot of people in this city don't. And it got old. I don't like it when characters have that big of a head start. Giving your character a few plot gifts, giving them one or two unusual abilities, that is fine, that is perfectly natural, that is a protagonist. That's the definition of a protagonist, is there's something about them that means they are the person doing it, even if it's only their resolve is the thing that's unique. Giving them something to get them going in the story, that's fine. But this felt like too much. He's too good at too many things. He's better than everyone at too much stuff. And his only weakness is he's poor. That's the only thing that's holding him back, is he's poor, and that classic, he's got a problem with authority. Those aren't really weaknesses. They're weaknesses, but they don't anywhere near balance out the huge amount of strengths that he's been given. And I am going to stop here to take a sip, because, believe it or not, sometimes I get tired of my own voice. Treated to seeing me sip my delicious squash there. Yes, I'm not going to bang on about it. Again, it's just something that I didn't go for. Now, there were, however, a couple of very good things in this. Things that were enough to make me get the next book. And for those who've seen a few of my videos, you'll know how rare that is. If book one doesn't grab me, I very rarely go for book two. So enough of this grabbed me that I am going for book two. And I did rather like a few things. The start of it was brilliant, with the demonic spiders and this very civilized robbery. And this man trying to live the life of a humble innkeeper, but he just can't do it. And his friend, who is worried that he's going to fall into becoming this harmless innkeeper and lose who he really is. That's really good. The very end of it in particular, that's summed up in a very, very good dynamic scene. I also like the slight self-awareness, because in parts of it, he's telling this story to the chronicler, and occasionally you'll have these interludes where the story stops and we're now back with Quoth the adult, sharing a few words and catching us up. And something I quite liked is there were sections that felt like they went on a bit too long. And just as they're getting to the point where you think, come on, get on with it, it'll stop. And Quoth from now will say, but enough of that, I'm babbling on. You think, yes, you were, but you knew exactly when to say, but enough of that. And he does this at least twice, where there's been a section where my interest had started to wane about here, and it got to about there, and he'd say, but enough of that, but we're getting dull. Yes, you were, well done, carry on with it. So that was good. And I really rather liked the naming master in the university, who is that sort of insane genius type, who is unpredictable and just incredibly random in the way he speaks. I really liked him, and I finished that book. I've just started the next one, I think Wise Men's Fear, and it feels like I've been rewarded, because all the bits that I liked about this, it started off with that, and we've got some cracking moments with that teacher, and I thought, yes, this is what I wanted from a sequel to this. This is the improvement that I'd hoped for. So I like to think I've shown good judgment in going for the second book, despite the first book being only okay, because that's what happened. It has improved. So, yeah, I think I will recommend The Name of the Wind, Patrick Rothfuss, because even if the protagonist was a bit, you're a little bit too good at everything, son, the story is good, and there's enough good in it to make you want to go to the next one, which is shaping up to be better. So that's my thoughts on that. Alright, I've put this off for long enough. Let's give this a go. Ifor Bach gan Eirig Salisbury. Nawr, mae'r llyfr hwn, mae'r targed ddim yn union am plant, ond mae'n am pobl mwy ifanc na fi, plant hen, pobl o ysgol gyfun. Ac felly roedd e'n nid yn hawdd, ond roedd hi'n gallu darllen trwy heb gorfod stopio pob cwpl o munudau beth yw hwn. Nid oedd e'n hawdd, mae wedi bod yn gwaith caled, ond mae'n gwaith mae'n rhaid i fi wneud. Mae'r bechgen yn mynd i'r ysgol cyn hir, ac does dim dewis, mae'n rhaid i fi ymarfer fy Gymraeg. Nawr, dwi eisiau darllen mwy o llyfrau fel hwn, a gweithio i lan, a ceisio darllen rhywbeth ar gyfer oedolion. Ond mae'n rhaid i fi dechrau rhywbeth. Nes i darllen Harry Potter, oedd hwnna'n llyfr am plant, ond roedd e wedi ysgrifennu mewn GOG, sy'n gwneud e'n mwy anodd na oedd hwnna'n. Am y stori, mae'n bu gaeaf 1958, ac da ni yn Senghennydd, yn Gelli Gaer. Mae Gelli Gaer lan fyna. A roedd hi'n hoffi hwnna, lot fawr. Mae'n siarad am Castell Coch. Mae Castell Coch just lawr fyna. 5 milltir i ffwrdd. 7 milltir i ffwrdd. Ac roedd lot o'r lleoedd yma, mae'n lleoedd dwi'n gwybod yn dda iawn, a dwi wedi bod i lot fawr. So oedd hi'n hoffi hwnna. Mae'r stori ei hunan, mae'n syml iawn. am bardd, a mae'n ei gaeaf a mae perygl o pobl yn y castell yn newanu, neu'n llwgu. No, newyn yw poison, llwgu would be starvation. A mae'n stori am Ifor yn ceisio helpu ei bobl gan mynd i'r Normaniaid neu mynd i arglwyddau agos a gofyn am ei help. A mae pobl yn cael ei lladd a pethau fel hwnna. Roedd hi'n hoffi fel dwi'n dweud, plot syml a gwaith caled, ond roedd hi yn hoffi roedd yn digon diddorol i cadw fi'n darllen. Bydd hi'n ceisio hwn eto, a bydd hi'n ceisio gwneud mwy o fideos fel hwn, ble dwi'n siarad yn Gymraeg, achos chi'n gallu gweld, rwy'n stopio lot fawr, mae angen fi meddwl am y gair nesaf, a dwi ddim yn llifo fel dyle fe, dim fel mae fy Saesneg yn. Felly, bydd rhaid i fi ymarfer hwn, a bydd rhaid i fi gwneud hwn lot mwy. So eisiau, achos mae'n anodd, a drwy'n edrych yn dwp yn gwneud e. Ond bydd hi'n rhoi cais i fe. Felly, Ifor Bach gan Eirig Salisbury. Ceisio fe. That was so much harder. It probably looked hard, and it was harder than it looked. Trying to speak naturally, because again, I refused to plan this in advance. I tried to do it all off the top of my head. That was hard. So it's a sign that I really do need to work on my Welsh, and I really do need to read more of these. For those of you who do not speak Welsh, it's a simple but straightforward story. It's interesting. It's about this area in I say early, it's 1158, in the time of the Norman occupation, and it's worth a read if you speak the language. Now I'm going to end it there before I make more of a fool of myself. I'm just going to hold up Lee Child's Killing Floor, Eirig Salisbury's Ifor Bach, and Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which I didn't have with me. Have a go at Name of the Wind, have a go at Ifor Bach, and if it's a genre you like, have a go at this. Just be prepared for a rather Mary Sue-ish protagonist. And yes, I shall leave that there, I think. Thanks for watching as ever. Thanks for putting up with my stuttering Welsh. This is James, aka JP Harker. Hwyl fawr.